Hi there. We recently ran into a problem that we thought we'd share a little bit about. This is our Winnebago Itasca 2015. We purchased it almost a year later, meaning the warranty was good for a year following that. Such just ran out about a week ago, and of course that's the time we ran into some trouble. We were coming back from a trip to Yellowstone and camping in a bit of a remote area, and sort of the thing that shouldn't happen happened. We extended our hydraulic leveling system and had some odd sounds occurring in that process. They did go down, but not as we should expect, so we re-engaged it, and on its second try they went down, all three 100%. It seems almost hyperextended, but the third one only halfway. At this point we got a reading on our LCI meter saying low voltage, and everything stopped down. There was no way of resetting the system in any possible way. It was completely locked up, and we equally so, I should say. But in any event, we sort of were in a pickle. It was Sunday, there weren't anybody to reach, and it was just a precarious situation where we didn't have answers. We looked in our manual. Both the thick one and the thin one didn't offer much information of what could be the problem. We were lucky to have some Wi-Fi, or at least internet signal, so we could Google this situation. That's right. So with such, we found some information we thought we should share. My wife will put a comment in the link here, a link of the phone number that we ended up calling the manufacturer of the LCI leveling system. There were several things that could be wrong, of course. Low voltage could mean no voltage, which turned out to be the case. But what we dealt with was sort of a complex situation of figuring out where the problem laid. We did have some tools with us, which I can highly recommend. We had a voltmeter, which seems to be essential. And then, in our case, all we needed was a Phillips screwdriver, and we could solve the problem. With some contact to the manufacturer, we sort of walked through a logical process of figuring out if there was some power to the pump or not. And I can show you over here in the housing, which we really haven't had much need to go to. Let's see here. Nah, that won't lock.
You want me to hold the baby?
I know why. That way. In this housing, the pump is located for the hydraulic system. It's a 12-volt run motor that has a solenoid on it to provide power. On that, and according to the manual, there is a way to manually lift or lower the legs, even though I understand that doesn't always work. There's a cup we can take off here, a little cap, and with I think it's 1/2-inch wrench on a perhaps cordless screwdriver, you can, after releasing pressure, which I believe is done on these two points right there, I think it's an Allen wrench that is needed to open up the valve, and then you can put on a socket wrench on a electric screwdriver and lower or hoist the whole vehicle that way. But in any event, we were in the situation of trying to figure out if we had power to it or not. So a simple test of running a voltmeter over the solenoid and pump, we put on negative on the negative point on the pump, and looked for power from the battery. It's still not clear to me. I believe the power comes directly from the starter battery from the car, from the Ford side of the Winnebago setup. In any event, we did not have power between positive coming from the battery and the pump. So we followed the wires back and looked for power, which we were unable to see. The other thing is, by the way, there's a fuse, just a small 15 amp fuse here. The whole system is operated with two power sources, one from the ignition, which would be this, and one directly from the battery at a higher voltage to run the pump. So you sort of have both systems working at the same time, or you'll have no lift. But ultimately, we discovered there were no power here and start looking for where the power source could have gone wrong. There is supposed to be a high voltage fuse, which most rigs, to our understanding, has got set up with a simple, almost like a GFI reset button that you can just engage it again. Of course, with our luck, we have no such thing on this rig. So we start looking for it and found that each battery compartment holds a burn-through copper strip. I think some of them are 125 amps and some 300 amps instead of a resettable one, and that's what we have here. So we looked for such and had no luck, but tracing the wires back and expecting to find a reset option here, we found that removing these couple of Phillips screw heads released this, and we can bring it out only to expose what we couldn't find. In here there are two sets of fuses. Power is coming into left and right center bar, and here's one of those mentioned fuses, and here's the other one over here. They're quite large. This was our problem. Your first point on the bar is your pump for your lifting hydraulic system. This fuse is burned, so what we did is we took this off and replaced it to this point where we found power with our voltmeter. Again, just with reading negative from the from the pump motor and positive on these points. We found we had power here. So we moved this cable over here. The manufacturer was, or the representative of them, which was an emergency contact, very helpful individual, was sort of keen on reminding us that these must be tightened down strong, and instead of just having it a point where you touch us, it must be secured, not to prevent any damage to pumps or relays, but to preserve the wires. The wires can burn in that process if they don't have a strong contact. So we moved this wire again, we moved this wire over here and found now we had power going to the pump. Our reading on our LCI meter indicated now regular operations. We pressed enter, and then we sort of redid the whole process of turning it on again and hitting retract as we should, and everything worked smooth, and we were on our way. Now the frustration laid in the fact that there was no mention of this whole panel of fuses. I'm assuming they don't want the consumer in here. It was easily accessible once you knew where it was. I found it sort of by luck. The manual doesn't make mention of this, nor of any sort of at least minor references to what could be wrong with the lifting system. So this is just what we wanted to share with you. There are fuses behind here. You should have your basic tools, and we've learned the hard way now, some plumbing parts and fuses on hand, and last a good voltmeter and some basic tools to be able to fix these kind of things.
Do you
Hopefully
remember
that helps.
you said do not turn on the power, that part, do you remember?
Yeah, that was with reference to making sure that you have the leads securely fastened before making any attempt at sending power through these cables. They have to be with a strong contact so that they won't damage your wiring. But ultimately, this is worth knowing and something I imagine most people can sort of do and handle. And lastly, I would say that had we not found that phone number with a contact to the manufacturer of LCI, we would sort of be up a creek on a Sunday in the remote forest we were in. So hopefully that helps, and we'll perhaps update some of these and see if we learn some other things we might share. All the best. Cheers.